How many times do we actually get to take a day out to think about management information? Probably never. And I really want you to think about some of the issues today, because we're going to try and provoke some of those issues and get your views on them as well. And just see where you are with MI. And of course, there are a lot of people here that are in the midst of doing MI, who have got mature MI systems. So please use the coffee breaks to talk to our guys and obviously talk to other people in the room. It will be a mixture of business and technically focused. So if you're an end user here thinking, I don't really care how it works as long as it does work, that's okay. If you're someone saying, yeah, that's all just flannel, I want to know how it works underneath the covers, that's okay as well. We're hopefully going to try and bridge those two areas. There'll be more presentations in the morning and pretty much all hands-on in the afternoon in terms of a crude split of the day. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, one of the things I should remind you of is to please turn your phones off, and there's graphic proof of that. Okay, it also won't be pure product based. Obviously, we're not going to say, oh, don't use our product because it's just one of many. We think there's some really special things that I hope you'll see today. But we are going to try and obviously talk about it generically in terms of what are the issues you face and what should you be thinking about and challenging. And I think there's a special onus here on business users. I think sometimes with MI, there is too much pushed on the technology, as in, oh, we've kind of told you what we want data from there, just mash it together and it'll all be fine. It isn't. You have to really think through some of the processing and some of the visualization that you want from that data. Otherwise, it will be a dog's dinner and you'll be back into the proverbial, they don't get what I mean type scenario. Okay, there are some people from Excel in Business about. Can you put your hands up, people from Excel in Business that are in the room at the moment? Right, 3 at the back. Andy is one of our senior consultants, worked on a lot of implementations, so if you're interested in the real nitty-gritty, talk to him. Baha has also been brought on board and does a lot of work in Power BI space, so for those of you interested in that, please talk to Baha. And Nico at the back is our technical god. He's worked for his sins in MI for about 25 years. And is our CTO and the brains behind the product solution. Sorry? 24 years. Okay, close enough. Okay, so hopefully also you'll have time. I think Luke, our marketing manager, asked you about drinks preferences, and I hope you can join us later on also in the bar afterwards. So in terms of the agenda, you'll all have a pack that you should have on your seats. That will have the agenda in there if you're thinking, I'm not quite sure what the next session is or whatever. It is in there, and there's a lot of collateral in there as well on the various offerings that we have. We're going to start nice and easy, i.e. we're all in one room, but that is going to change. So I'm just going to go and take you through what I see the key challenges out there. And then I'm going to hand over to Craig Richardson, who's just joined us there. You missed the special thanks to Antillo, I think, but we did give you a thank. Craig is going to go through about how do you deal with MI when you're looking at third-party involvement. So it's not just fulfilling your own internal needs, it's other people actually to some degree mandating and dictating what sort of things you should be providing. Also, we've got David Bridge from Adderbridge Consulting at the back there. We've been doing a lot of work with him in the hotel space. And some of the things that I'm going to bring up in terms of things like bad data, he's certainly seen in spades from a completely different industry. And that's quite interesting in some of the challenges that he'll go through. And Andy will then take you through a prototype that we've built where we've changed obviously all the data and changed the names and stuff. That's probably our biggest issue in terms of showing you stuff, is obviously we want to be able to show you real stuff, but obviously customers don't want to show you real stuff, which is the challenge. Then at 11:30, we have chaos. You can have a refreshing and networking break, but then it's going to be like a combination of EasyJet and Ryanair, because when we come back, the rooms are going to be in two. So where you guys are sitting there, I don't know if you can just see those black thing, that is going to come across here, and we're going to have 2 streams. We thought it was too easy to do it all in one room, so we're going to do it 2 streams. One will be what I've dubbed the insurance and Power BI stream, and one being the finance stream. Now obviously if you have multiple people from the same organisation, you might want to divvy that up across them, but it's your choice where you go there. But the finance stream will be in that back room there, and it'll be on that TV you're seeing at the back. So what's going to happen there, Gary Watson's going to join us, the MD from Walsingham, and he's been using the insurance solution now for about 2 years. He's going to talk about the trials and tribulations of that and how they started and how it's involved. And then I'm going to actually take you through that application. Obviously I can't take you through his live data now, but thankfully it is an early version of his system with a few changes to data, but by and large it is the system they're actually using. So really excited about being able to show that to you. On the finance side, Chris is going to take you through the work that he's doing at Autism Initiatives, and they have a kind of different challenge in some respects, is they've got to get MI out to 80 managers, but the 80 managers are not online. So it's not a case of saying, okay, we have this great solution and then just all connect to the database and you're doing all these interactive reports, it's cool. They're not allowed to do that. So what sort of challenges does he face and how do they actually resolve those? And then in the other two sessions are going to be done, I'm afraid, by two of our consultants. Unfortunately, as you all know, with the pressures of life, we had two people, Jan Briggs, the financial controller of Sigvaris, and Cesko Rignetti, the director of finance at Bulgari. Cesko had to go to Italy and Jan had to go to a management meeting, so unfortunately they couldn't be here, but they have provided all the material for us, and that can be hopefully enhanced by our consultants, Andy and John, because both of those worked on the respective projects, so are quite close to it. We then have a break for lunch, which is on the 7th floor. One down where you got your refreshments this morning, and then in the afternoon we keep in that 2-track. Nico's going to talk about, if you're in the insurance industry, how could you do things quicker? How could you actually get things up and working faster, more reliably, more streamlined? And I'm going to take the finance stream through our 2018 version of financial analytics. And the big thing that we've changed there particularly is the whole area of budgeting and forecasting. Primarily we've been a financial consolidation and reporting tool, but now we have the ability to branch out and actually include the budgeting and forecasting process in there as well. Andy and John are then going to do a detailed session in this room on Power BI, and how many of you have come across the product called Power BI? Right, how many of you are actually using it? Okay, couple. Interesting, because quite a phenomenon, I'll talk about that, but there are some real, I think, best practices associated with that in terms of do's and don'ts, and we'll cover some of that, and Andy will cover that in detail. And then John is going to take the finance stream through a case study from healthcare management systems. And they've, the thing that I think we always find amazing as a software vendor is you try and think how people are going to use your product, and then of course they end up using it in ways you never ever dreamt. Now in his case, it started on financial reporting, so bog standard gig in terms of our involvement, but then they wanted to publish it to an intranet and then an extranet where their customers could come in and look at some of their financial information. And they wanted it completely reformatted. They weren't using a standard product like a SharePoint, or they weren't using Power BI. They had their homegrown intranet where they wanted to mash the information up and present it in a common way. And then after a short break, the session I urge you not to miss is the most amazing analytics applications in days, where Nico is going to take some of his 20 years or 24 years as he just volunteered and show you how can you put something from a blank sheet of paper together really, really quickly. Now obviously it's not as easy as that in the real world. We're not saying you can do application literally in a day, but the sort of things you can use our tools for and get through quickly. And then when we wrap up, we should wrap up around 4:30, and then I hope you can join us in the bar. Okay, so let's get into it. In terms of the changes, I'll take just a very short couple of minutes to talk about what we did in 2017, which was to rebrand our company and product to EiB. For those of you new to the company, you couldn't care less. For those of you who are used to using a product called a la carte, just worth knowing what that really means. And then I'm going to focus on really what are the 3 things you need to get right for MI applications. Now, these are not 3 things on their own. Obviously, when you're developing anything software-wise or application-wise, you as a customer obviously have to have goals, objectives, and how you're going to measure the success and ROI of the project. Obviously, all those things are exactly the same in an MI project. But where the 3 things I think are really, really different, and if you don't get all those 3 right, in my opinion, you're dead. And that is the whole area of data quality, business logic, and also visualization. How do you present the information at the end of the day? Now, does anyone here absolutely 100% happy with their data? Okay, quite interesting. I wouldn't have expected you to be, but you obviously realise why that is such a key. And the trouble is with that, there is no silver bullet. It's not a case of you buy a bit of technology and you run it and hey, it just magically corrects it for you. It doesn't happen. And in fact, there are some things you can get into that can actually make it worse, and I'll actually cover those as well. And then obviously we'll talk about how does our product help. So apologies for those of you who do know us, but just as a quick intro, our business is MI. That's all we do. Myself and Nico have worked in this for the last 20 odd years, and we've been involved in a lot of MI companies. And with the new product, the EiB Analytics product, we're trying to keep things simple. I don't know whether you'll like our pricing when you discuss it with us, but you'll certainly understand it. It's really simple pricing per annum. It's as easy as that. In terms of our product, as last year, if you'd come to this session, you'd have had a company called Excel in Business, and our product was called a la carte, and that confused the hell out of everyone, and we actually realise now why. One person actually said to us, we never know what to call you, whether you're the Excel in Business company or a la carte. We had another person say, do you actually own a la carte, or do you just rent that and buy that in from somewhere? So we changed all that to make it simple, and now it simply is Excel in Business, a single brand with products underneath, and that really is all there is to it. I don't want to waste any more time than that. But our EiB Analytics core product is the thing that drives everything, and that has a mixture of a back-end platform for building MI applications and a front-end platform in Excel, as you may have guessed from the opening video. Okay, so don't be fooled. I think if anyone says, I mean, there is a bit of a clamber at the moment in the market where everyone's going, give us your data and I'll build you an application in the afternoon with all these lovely dashboards. Yeah, they can do that. We can do that. How useful will that be? None at all. It's rubbish. Yeah, it might give you a basic feel about some of your information, but nothing more than that. And Power BI is a phenomenon. Power BI has been introduced by Microsoft product. It's only been around for about 3 or 4 years, and it's gone from absolutely nothing to the #1 BI dashboarding product out there. Ahead of some giants like Tableau and Click, which you may have come across. And it's a really, really good product for dashboarding, but it's also a really bad product if you don't use it right. So one of the things that I think, would it be fair to say in your organisations people have had concerns before about the proliferation of Excel spreadsheets, where Excel spreadsheets are all over the place and someone goes, where the hell is all this stuff? Is that a fair comment? Well, just think about how you could make that worse. Because with Excel, just say you want to do simple things. One of the beauties of Power BI is it allows you to publish things to the web. So you could have something on your desktop, you publish it to the web, I can then use an iOS or an Android or a web browser, and I can get access to all that information. How cool is that? It's really cool. But think about that. Let's say I'm a small company. All I've got is a P&L in Excel, and I've got a balance sheet in Excel. Fairly simple stuff. And I think, I know what I'll do. I'll publish it to the web. So then my non-exec shareholders and my board, I've got access to nice color-coded P&Ls and balance sheets all through their iPad. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And it is at face value. But think about, what does your Excel workbooks have in spades? They have formula. Most Excel workbooks, the biggest nightmare we always have is someone says, I can tell you what we're trying to achieve. Here's a workbook. It's got 54 sheets and it's got about 3,000 formula in it, and that's everything we want to do. Yeah, right. But that's the real world. Downside is Power BI has a similar but very different language to allow you to do the same sort of calculations in the Power BI tool. So you get where I'm kind of going with this. So you've now got that for the balance sheet, and now what have you done? If you're worried about proliferation, you've now got 2 models, 2 sets of calculations, 2 lots of maintenance. Congratulations, you've doubled your workload. So in a way, you've repeated the Excel workbook nightmare. So we want to talk today about how you avoid doing that and how you centralise things to make sure that doesn't happen, and also how you can share the data and the business logic. Because I think where we want to be is where we say, if the application has got all the data structured in the way we want, who cares if you want to use a pivot table, Power BI, our EiB Report Studio, Tableau? Who cares? Because all of those will inherit the business logic that's in the application. You're not trying to code around going, if Tableau do this, if Power BI do this, if pivot tables do that. You're never going to win that scenario. Okay, one thing's for sure is there is a lot more data coming to the world. I think that's obvious. The stats are all there. I must be honest, whenever anyone says, we've had a massive increase of data, my only thought is, oh shit, more bad data. That's not good. And the trouble is as well, is I've not had any conversation with anyone over the last 5 years actually, where they've said, you know what, our MI demands are growing so much, we're going to recruit 2, 3, 4 people. Just not had it. So we've got to do more with the same, in some cases do more with less, and that's all about how do we automate applications. And of course with that comes more complexity, and obviously we need to simplify that down and help you simplify that down. But as I said earlier on, wouldn't it be great if you could do that? But there is no silver bullet in this stuff. It is about working through a process. And if you look at the incredible cost, you've all admitted by not saying you're happy with your data that you do have bad data, but look at the magnitude of that. 3.1 trillion was IBM's estimate of the yearly cost of bad data in the States, just in the US. And when you look into it, it's also what are the issues? And I'm sure you've seen this in your own organisations. People recognise the data as errors, and in the face of a critical deadline, many individuals simply make corrections themselves to complete the task at hand. They don't think to reach out to the data creator, explain their requirements, and help eliminate root causes. How many times have we had that? Where people said, oh yeah, crikey, I was trying to get the ball pack out, but that was wrong. So I made a manual adjustment. I'll sort it out next time properly. I will. Do you ever get around to doing that? And so these are all the issues that you can see. And when you look at the impact that has on your staffing there, 50% of time, knowledge workers, analysts, underwriters in the insurance profession are kind of hunting the data, trying to correct the errors. That's not what you're employed to do. That's not where you add value to your company, being an Excel or data jockey. You're not employed to do that. But most of us almost become that because of the scenario. Okay, so the need for intelligent bad data handling. You'll see this if you come to my presentation on insurance with the Walsingham system, where I'll show you what we actually produce to not only highlight the bad data and reject the bad data, but also give it some reasoning. It doesn't really help us. If you had 20,000 erroneous records, it doesn't help you if I say to you, good news is I've reported all them. If you look through and work out what's wrong, then we can correct them. That doesn't help you at all. So we try and do that as part of the application. Okay, so MI data considerations. You need to follow the basics. Automation and collection and error handling is really the start point. And you need to document what the error rules are. And you might think, why do I need to do that? Isn't it obvious if I tell someone? It isn't obvious at all. And actually, Phil will know this from the project we've been working on together. We were working for one insurance company, and we automated all the stuff out of Scheme Trader, and they said, your numbers don't add up by underwriting year to our numbers. They just don't match. Okay, went back through all the stuff. No, we were picking up all the stuff. Let's understand the business rules here. Hold on, one of the business rules you told us is every policy is annual. Yes, it is. The company wasn't allowed to write non-annual policies. Not true. Actually, when you look at it, the reason why our numbers differ from yours is there's a load of records here where the business was written as a 10-month policy. So actually the same policies coming into the same underwriting year. Now that's pretty fundamental, but there's loads of examples like that. So don't think, it was my point at the beginning about business users having to think. Don't think, well, that's kind of just techie detail, someone can handle that. That will really bite you if you don't think it through. You need to think through what the business rules are for the data. And be aware of the false silver bullets. I'm a big fan of the whole big data and machine learning stuff. I really am. But not until the data's correct. If you do it before the data's correct, let's just have a look at what some of the ramifications are. Because machine learning is all about understanding, obviously, things from your data, but it works largely on sampling data. And there's no real audit on it. You have to trust the algorithms. You have to trust the maths, and the results are the results. Now, if you're thinking about it's working from sampling data, and take one insurance example here where 24% of all information was invalid and 32% of location information was missing. So location was deemed a very important element to measure for the business, but 32% didn't exist in the records, they're just blank. So what's going to happen if you put machine learning on that? Are you happy with the possible conclusion that it's better to do business where the location doesn't exist? Really? It's rubbish. So you have to start thinking, and you have to do the basics right. And that's referred to, I took this from a SAS, a very big business intelligence and statistical software handler, and they stated the two fairly obvious ones of why machine learning and stuff is actually struggling to take off to some degree. One is the lack in the trust, because you can't prove anything. The second one is, does it integrate into your existing business processes, because it is quite new, and then bang, immediately you're into data integrating to support it. And that is an issue. So would you, people like Amazon have made this work absolutely unbelievably, but they didn't take any shortcuts. They did make sure they got all the data warehousing and stuff absolutely bang on in the early days before they started going into the more advanced stuff. Okay, the other thing you need to think of from an app is what happens if all the data isn't there? What do you do? A couple of examples here, and I don't know if any of you have any yourselves, then be delighted to know, but we have in financial services, we work for Raffles Bank, and we do a lot of their credit card MI, which comes in from American Express and and Visa and MasterCard. And the problem is we're processing 1,000 daily feeds. Now, what's the thing that's absolutely certain about that? You're not going to have 1,000 daily feeds submitted on one day. It's never going to happen. I don't think it's ever happened. So does that mean then that Rafe will say, you know what, that's totally understandable, so all the bits that we don't have then we won't report on? And we can't produce a group position obviously because we don't have the data. Of course not. So they're going, well, hold on, we now need to look at the ATMs in this example and start saying, well, this ATM has a profile that by and large it doesn't change much week in, week out. So if it doesn't change week in, week out, then put in the same day last week and substitute that into the numbers. Others will have different profiling. So it's not a case of always the data even exists. David will tell you in the hotel industry, you know, one of the stuff we're doing at the moment is looking at cost of events, and cost of events coming down to things like menu items, things you buy to make up the meals for the actual event. Okay, so what happens if the ingredients don't exist? Do we just say, well, there was no cost? Well, of course there was cost. Yeah, but we don't have the cost because no ingredients. Can't do that. Have to substitute, have to have a master file. So those sort of things are things you need to think about, because again, you can't just say, oh, bloody IT, they didn't think of that. That's a real business issue. You know, it's not insurmountable, but you better know what the answer is behind it. And also you need to understand the ramifications of handling it. Because now the other problem you've got is, if I look at it as a user, how do I know that looking from event 1 to event 2, that one has made up data to some degree and that one has bulletproof facts? So you're into other ramifications that you need to think through. And what happens if the data needs to be reconstructed? I know Gary won't mind me using this, but this is a Walsingham example. When we started doing work at Walsingham, the first thing they said, well, we want to obviously analyse information by location. Yeah, is that in the data? Yeah. Yeah, you're right. What was it by? Town, region? Yeah, cool, great. Then we suddenly look at it, and in towns we have London, Aylesbury, Sussex, England, United Kingdom. That doesn't make for a really meaningful breakdown by region. So we had to reconstruct the data, because when we looked at the postcodes, they were spot on and they were complete. So we reconstruct the regions now from the postcode. Now we could have been brutal and said, that's bad data, you've got to go through, but you've got to be also pragmatic. You know, if we said to some, oh, you've got 20, 30,000 policies, and if you just go through and edit every one and put the right location in, life will be good. You and I both know the answer to that. It's never going to happen. So you have to be pragmatic as well. And what happens if the data needs augmentation? We're talking to one insurance company at the moment that does flood cover, and they've got all their data in postcodes, but that's really useless, because when they do it actually demographically, they want to look at it lat long. So we need to obviously auto convert that data as part of the application, so we get a true lat long analysis rather than postcode. Walsingham again, ages. They've got their age of their drivers that they're analysing in their insurance app, but they want that all nicely banded for their carrier. So they want that broken down between, say, 21 and 29-year-olds and 30 to so-and-so-year-olds. So we've got to augment that. We've got to build those relationships in. And not only have we got to build them in, but we've got to allow them to maintain it. It's not really reasonable to say, okay, if next year you want 21 to 32, well, you have to come back to EiB and we have to edit the application. Yeah, that's not going to work either. Okay, the other thing is business logic. This is a massive one. It's so often ignored, and it's probably the highest price to pay. And time is an obvious one, particularly when you're looking at BI software products, because most BI software products make one fundamental assumption, that a year breaks down into months, and months break down into days. Now, a lot of the time, in a lot of industries, that's perfectly valid. Insurance is rubbish, because your underwriting years can go on for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And your year-to-date calculations across those are now not nicely within one year. They're actually a year-to-date or a lifetime-to-date across 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So again, you better make sure that your software handles that, or the whole application handles that, when you're getting into those sort of things. And there are some pretty complex calculations that people are doing. I'm not going to cover the fleet pooling one, which we did for a company in the Middle East, and that was all about where they were using different people's ships. They kind of owned some ships, and they had a relationship with a company on other ships, and depending at any one point in time where cargo was going around the world, it may be more advantageous to use somebody else's ship because it's closer, but you've got to pay a premium for that because it's not your ship, and and there was a whole model built around handling that. So we can handle, and you might have to handle, depending on your app, some fairly complex business logic. And you sure as hell don't want to do that 2 times. You don't want to do that once, reuse everywhere. And stand back, I think, from a user's perspective, what would you expect at each stage of the app? And again, certainly, I know it sounds bleeding obvious to say consider the cost, but the cost times 2, the cost of actually setting it up, and obviously the cost of ownership, in terms of how much do you have to edit and change and adapt as you go through. Okay, need for thinking through the business logic. I'm sorry to put this on to your non-insurance people here, but the insurance people will understand this, and I think the non-insurance will. This is a really, simple example here, where, is everyone used to amortization as a business concept or not? Anyone not familiar with that? Okay, good. So what we're doing here, obviously insurance has that in spades, because in their industry, what you're doing, if I kept the maths nice and simple, as you can see, if I take up a policy for £365, then I get that as written premium, but I earn that over the months, so I get the same earned amount, 365 at the end. Nice and simple. But what happens if we have a change in April? And we've changed our Mini Metro to a Jaguar. So now there's a massive additional premium that also gets earned to the end of the year. But now from an analysis point of view, what the hell do we do with that data? Because that was against the Mini Metro, but we don't have a Mini Metro anymore. So now surely that should go against the Jaguar, because it's still premium being earned. Now that's a simple, but not simple, actually, example in terms of how you have to handle various things when you're doing analysis in MI. The other thing we're seeing as a change in MI now is internal data and internal audience is no longer adequate. You remember in the good old days when we just did actual versus budget performance internally, and if you're a hero or a villain? That's kind of changing now. Now you are ahead of your target, so what? It's all about the measurement against your peers as well. You know, take the hotel industry, a good example here. You know, if you're doing well against your target, but all hotels of the same sort around your region are doing twice as good, are you doing well or are you doing badly? Probably doing badly. And you know, we're seeing that in shipping. You know, in shipping now, there is an organisation called shipping.org where they've defined KPIs across all the different processes in shipping. Because again, it's all about benchmarking. How are we doing? Are we competitive with our vessels against what our competitors are doing? I mentioned in hotels, and one of the things that John will cover in the Bulgaria example is the hotel industry are quite good here. They've actually got a uniform chart of accounts, which has its own issues. But the good thing about that is now is they're saying they can contrast their performance against other hotels with the same sort of in the same sort of bracket. So from an MI point of view, that means we're no longer about just loading in internal data, but one project we're doing at the moment is actually taking in data from Experian in the insurance industry to actually do credit risk checks against the data. So now we're combining information internally against information coming externally to again assess the validity of the business. Okay, dashboards. This is my pet love and hate. If you look at Power BI, the thing I hate about it is they build some beautiful, beautiful dashboards. And that might sound a weird thing to say because we can inherit all that, but they are kind of, I don't know, Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen type dashboards. You know, they look all very pretty, but are they really useful? You know, just a matter of interest, there's a beautiful dashboard from Microsoft actually on Power BI. What's the first thing you look at? What's the first numbers you look at? Tell me. Anyone want to tell me? Go on to the dashboard, should be obvious. Which one are you looking at? Sorry?
The biggest one.
The biggest one. What's the biggest one?
85.
85. Oh, so you look top left for the number. Okay, interesting. Did everyone look at 8522s, I think? Yeah? But it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's not obvious. Why didn't you look at the right-hand side with all the squares there? The trouble is when you do all this multiple chart stuff, it is really, really hard. Nothing wrong with having multiple charts, but multiple charts all of a different sort, normally with a picture of someone, because that always has to be a sales gimmick. You know, what is the point of that? You can't understand it. And look at the whole array. You know, loads of them. This one, better, as in more consistency of the information. But they're green. Is that green the same as that green? And is green actually good, or is it just that the designer of the dashboard likes green? Again, lots of different things to consider. And whilst these might make you look impressive early on, it will just mean your system won't get used. And this one, dreadful. Everyone who knows me knows how much I hate pie charts as much as Stephen Few, I think. But whether it be that or not, you know, really, really bad design. So I'm sorry, but our dashboards are much more boring. But hopefully they are more useful in terms of they have some consistency and they have common layout and they have a common place where you can change the information. And Andy will be talking to you about that in the Power BI session. These were all using Power BI on top of our applications. Okay, so to wrap up in the last 20 minutes. What are we doing about all that? I think one of the nice things about our EiB Analytics 218, it is a complete MI platform. And I would argue it is everything you need to deliver apps based on the Microsoft platform. We are wedded to the Microsoft platform, so we're not everything to everyone, but we do that really well. And what does that mean? It means there are two fundamental products we have, EiB App Studio, and two fundamental modules. These are part of the EiB Analytics single product. You have EiB App Studio, which you'll see a lot in Nico's session later on, where we're talking about how do we put apps together in one place. Out of the audience here, who's involved in putting MI applications together? So not consuming them, but actually putting them together. Okay, there's a couple of you. So you know, and are you both used to the Microsoft platform? Yeah? Okay, so Microsoft at the moment gives you everything to build a data warehousing application, without any doubt. They've got studios and products and all those good things. Downside is they've got studios and products and all those good things. How many products do you have to weld together in one place to actually see an entire application? There is no way in the Microsoft world that you could actually, if I said to you, take me through the entire application, you could bring up one screen and actually say, yep, I start here and I do this and I do that and I do that. It just doesn't exist. Now that's what we have with the EiB App Studio. We use all the underlying Microsoft components, but we hide them from you and we have a visual way of you seeing the information at every stage. And then we have an Excel add-in on the front end called EiB Report Studio that can access the various types of databases that you need to access to deliver MI. And of course, a lot of those would be produced using EiB App Studio in the first place. Now you might be thinking, why do you want to have an Excel add-in product? You know, Microsoft's got pivot tables, they've got Power Pivot. You know, there's a whole raft of Microsoft platforms. Well, again, you know, we said earlier on, we've worked in this for 20 odd years, and unfortunately, you know, Nico has grey hair, I have no hair. There's a reason for that. You know, and that is when you look at some of the pragmatic issues around that, is you have things like scalability. You know, we're trying to encourage end users to do anything they want. How many times have you heard from a vendor, oh, you can slice and dice the information any way you want? That's bullshit. Because a lot of the time if you do something, you'll hit on something and it'll just stop or it'll crash. Why will it crash? Because you're doing something ridiculous. You're actually building a query that's bringing back 2 million rows of data. That's ridiculous. But who says? We can't have a cake and eat it. We can't say as a vendor, you can slice and dice anything you want as long as it's sensible. Who defines what sensible is? Now our add-in handles that, and that's one of the reasons why we have it. So there's an example of an entire application. That's Walsingham's application actually. Might not make much sense to you in that, guys, but we have a series of, it's almost like Lego bricks that we glue together, and at any stage here you can right click on one of these Lego bricks and see how the data looks. So you understand at every stage, if you're transforming it or merging it with other data sources, how all those things fit together. So we'll cover this more in the insurance sessions, but insurance, this is typically how it works. We have different premiums and claims data feeds. They get loaded into the product. We spit out any errors and tell the people why. We mash that data together in an MI database, which is a Microsoft cube, and then we make available the reports through our Excel add-in or through pivot tables if you want to use them, but there are some restrictions there, and also through Power BI if you want to use mobile or web deployment. And similarly in finance, we have a great product in finance, and a lot of that stuff tends to come from the Sage databases. We take them from the various Sage databases, stick them into our own cubes, and again, front end that with either our Excel add-in or Power BI. Now, one of the things we've added in 218, which I can have to say, our development guys have done an amazing job here, because this is a real major problem in the Microsoft space, is actually enabling write back that actually works. A lot of applications now, it's not just about taking data in, it's also adding to it. You know, we have one customer at the moment in the Sage world where their sales managers are all cost centers in Sage, and they get obviously all their actuals and budgets from Sage coming through into our MI cube, but then they want to do a forecast. They want each salesperson to do a forecast, but they wanted them to enter that data directly, so they own it, they can see the actual and budget, and they can see the effect. So we have to be able to get that information in, and they have to have that information roll up. But of course, it has to be controlled. You know, we're not saying for one moment, yeah, just go into the actuals, and if you don't like what's in Sage, then just adjust it in MI. Of course, you can't do that. And I'll be showing you that in the financial analytics session this afternoon. But this is the key slide really. If I look at what the platform brings, obviously there are going to be lots of different back office apps in whatever industry you're in. And they could be a mixture of all things. They could be SQL Server, Oracle, other databases. You might have some web live data like exchange rates, stuff from Experian. You might have some files in your organization that you want to hoover up and put into an MI platform. Or as we've just discussed, you might want to have manual information come into that as well. Now, EiB App Studio will take that information and go through all these processes. And I'm not going to cover all of them now. Nico will cover some of those in his session. But it's all about, we might even have to go and get the data. You know, one of the things we can't assume is, can we really assume that, okay, when we start, we've got this nice SQL database here and we interface to that and we just load the data. A lot of the case, that's not the case. Some of our customers, we have to FTP it from somewhere. We have to know it exists on another site, FTP that data over to our site, then load the data. That's before we start. Now, you don't have to do that outside the MI environment because then you're into multiple tools and. So we can do that all from within EiB App Studio. We can also then do all the error handling, and one of the things we built into 218 is an encryption object as well. So if by mistake or you wasn't sure that you originally wanted to analyze information by a certain criteria and then found out it was surname or first name or whatever that really shouldn't have been in there, then we can actually, rather than saying, well, let's change all the load routines so we don't bring that data in anymore, or you change your extract and rather than having all that hassle, we can encrypt it. So there's no way you can make actually any sense of it. Now, the beauty of going through this process, it means that we can design and you can design the application for what it's best suited for. You know, I'm not going to bore you with all the different database types for MI, but there's no brilliant one. Each of these here have their own role and their own strengths and their own weaknesses, and we can prepare the data based on your requirements for whichever one or ones make sense. But the big but here is because all the logic is built within the application, it means you can then decide how you want to front that information. If it makes sense for you to use our add-in because there's a heavy reporting bias, then fine, you get that for free. If you're more familiar with pivot tables, or some of your users want to use pivot tables because they're familiar with it, that's okay. If you had Tableau in a larger business and you wanted to use that, that's okay. Or if you want to use Power BI, that's okay as well. But the difference is, you're not having to now reinvent the application on every front end. You just literally talk to the database and you inherit everything. So take again insurance. If you have something complex like earned premium, I don't have to think, oh God, I calculated earned premium that our add-in can understand, but now someone wants to put Power BI on that, so I'll have to write a load more code in Power BI to recalculate earned premium. That's a complete and utter waste of time. You don't want to get into that, and you don't need to. And the key thing we put around that is automating. All of that can be automated. One of the biggest issues I've seen with MI certainly in the last 5 years, is normally in most organizations, if the MI person is not in, then MI doesn't happen. Just being honest, does that happen with any of you? Anyone here, if the MI person's not in, your MI goes? Yeah, lots of nodding heads there. That, when you think about it, is that not a ridiculous thing in this day and age, that we're totally dependent? I did a financial demo not so long ago when I actually asked, I had the financial director and financial controller at the meeting, and I said to the financial director, just be honest with me, why are you doing this project? And the actual answer was, so he can go on holiday when he wants to, rather than when I tell him. And that again was all around, you know, if he's not here, the MI doesn't happen, so you know we have to work it all in. Ridiculous scenario. Also, documentation. Quick question for you. How many people have got well-documented MI applications? So you know how all the databases work underneath, and it's all, how many? Andy's putting his hand, you can't do that. Yeah. And if anyone had said yes, I'd say, how many have got up-to-date documentation? Now, it is one of those things, isn't it? And all of us, I'm sure, in the room realise it's important. But what happens with documentation? I can tell you what happens with documentation. You get towards the end of a project and someone in the end user community wants this extra bit of functionality and you don't have the budget. I know what we'll do. We'll scrap the documentation and redivert the money into the end user application. That's fairly familiar, isn't it? You don't have to worry about that here. We can self-document. We can actually take any databases that we generate and say if we built a SQL Server warehouse or we built a SQL Server cube, put a documentation object against it afterwards, and every time you run the update to the database, it'll then document all those databases for you. Makes it a bit easier. And last but not least, which I'll come on to, is we've introduced a hosted option, and that has been, I think, Nico's biggest nightmare and excitement that he's ever had, I think. Well, probably that's not, probably, it's probably not fair to say that. I'll rephrase that. But that is a very complex issue in its own right. How many of you here do work or want to work with hosted solutions? Wow, no one wants to work with hosted solutions. All right, Nico, just wasted retirement. Oh, I'm surprised. Okay, we'll come back to that one. So once we've got all the data in, what do we do on the front end? Our add-in in Excel allows you to do various things. It has a number of ribbons, and you'll see those highlighted at the top there. And each one allows you to do different things. So the EiB Analytics allows you to package your information and run your reports. And you can see here, I've packaged this up as a nice menu. You then have the ability to take information from cubes and build financial reports or other formatted reports. You can take direct data directly from SQL databases and build interactive reports. And you can build dashboards from within the Excel environment as well. Again, you might be saying, well, why would you do that? Because any data you bring back in Excel, I just go to the Excel insert chart and I put it over and I can do that myself. Yeah, you can. It's all fine. But remember what Excel does when you change the data. So bearing in mind you're on top of a big database here, so imagine you're looking at a corporate financial consolidation. The magnitude of the data for the group company is probably going to be massively different from one cost center in one of your small subsidiaries. Excel doesn't normally handle that very well. You double click and change the data. What will it do? It will say, I need more space to put a legend on the y-axis because you've gone from thousands to millions. So I'll compress all the data in the chart and I'll make the axes diagonal because I can't really fit it all in. So when you give it to your board, you might have the top left-hand chart with diagonal axes, the middle one with vertical axes, the right one with horizontal axes. How can you be so rubbish at delivering MI? But that is a real world. That's what happens. So we address that with the dashboarding module. Also distribution. Chris will come onto this at Autism. This is all about what happens if we need to get information out quick to lots of users, but they're not online. So yes, even at a super simple level, I've got a P&L that I want to give out to 30 managers, but none of those are online. Even if the solution's brilliant and we get all that information instantly, how do I have to stop going, right, double click, change to cost center manager 1, save the report as a static report, email it to cost center manager 2, repeat, repeat, repeat. We can avoid all that with the with the distribution module. Okay. One of the things we've noticed as well in the last few years is there's definitely been a move from tools to more of an apps approach. And I think we've kind of seen this, I think, with probably the whole rise in the phone type apps now. We don't want to tend to build something from scratch. And if I said to you, you can slice and dice the data in any way you want, I'll just give you the tool and away you go. Or would you like me to give you the 10 main reports you use and then you can do it? Most people now would lean to the latter one, actually, because we're interested in automating the process in our business. We're not really interested in just slicing and dicing data for the sake of it. So we've spent a lot of effort trying to make that simple and effective. I said we base our technology on Microsoft. Why? Hopefully obvious. I don't know whether any of you follow this, but certainly in Gartner obviously tracks all the people in the MI space, and Microsoft now, particularly with its SQL Server and its Office 365 and now its Power BI offering, has been a consistent leader for the last few years, but has actually gone further ahead now in 2018. So we use Power BI optionally. You don't have to have Power BI, but where do we think it makes sense? We do think it is the best mobile and web-based data visualization experience out there. So if you want to actually deliver to your tablet and you want people to be on the road and have access to your MI in a secure environment, then Power BI really does tick that box. And the nice thing is it will work on all of our applications pretty much out of the box because at the end of the day, we'll have processed all the business logic that I said before, and that will be encapsulated in the application. Now, there's a couple of different versions here. There's Power BI Desktop, which sits in Windows. That's where you can actually create your dashboards. And then there's the Power BI app, which runs on iOS, Android, Windows Phone, if it's still there, and Windows 10. And then there's also a web client. So if you look at those combinations, you can pretty much roll out information to anywhere on any device. And the nice thing is you're not storing the data on the device. So the good thing about that, obviously from an IT security point of view, you have to be authenticated to actually get that information. And you can take it a bit further. I know Nico hates this sort of stuff, but I still think it's pretty cool. You can now deliver stuff on your Apple Watch. So if you've got some summary indicators you want to deliver, that is perfectly okay. Likewise, Microsoft are putting things like barcode readers. So, you know, you might think, well, why on earth would I want to access MI through a barcode? But think about it, if you've got things like field service engineers, and they've got information they want to bring a dashboard up or something, they go to somewhere, and I'll show you an example of that, they can then just put their phone over that and it will give them all the information that's pertinent about that particular performance of that piece of equipment. Not so silly now. That's quite a good idea. And obviously then there's the voice thing. And I was being goaded about this earlier on. I am going to try that actually. So, you know, you should be able to, I mean, we're all used to things like, I guess, Siri and particularly Alexa in the last few years, but certainly here, you know, you should be able to say, "Hey Cortana, show me net profit by region." And it's not even going to hear me. Show me net profit by region. Nothing, goes off to the web. Okay, it's a live demo. Okay, well I'm going to use actually the internal name here because then it is guaranteed. Hey Cortana, show me net. Oh. This is the last time, I promise. Show me net profit by CC.
I found net profit.
Yay! Okay, so obviously not ideal conditions to do it, but even so, you know, that stuff will be more and more ubiquitous. And if you look at that from a boardroom perspective, how nice is that to be able to just say that and then build on that? One of the things I think I can just flip over and hopefully show you, based on the excellent success rate of 0 out of 1, is you should also be able to go in here, and if I just flip the monitor across here, oh, flip it to the right one would even help. So now what I'm doing is I'm accessing one of our applications, but I'm accessing it through Power BI on my iOS device. So I'm on my iPad here going across. And one of the things as well that Microsoft's done a lot of work on is actually building in natural query language. So again, you could have something like show me. I don't even think we have to write show me, do we, Andy? So is it, what have we got on there? We've got WGMPI. So WGMPI. And again, you can give them their own friendly names. We're using actual names at the moment straight out of the database because that you don't have to do any setup for. Now you could obviously change that to a more friendly thing, like show me that by broker, and it would then recognize that. And then what that's done now is that's built a thing on the fly. There's nothing pre-prepared there. That's not like we've actually had that query pre-built. That's actually just interacting with the data. Now I guess you can see where that's going. You combine the voice stuff with that, and you start thinking, yeah, I would love to be in a board meeting saying, show me results, show me P&L by cost center, show me P&L by department, and I'm just getting results like that. Why wouldn't I want to do that? So Power BI gives us a lot of stuff we can deliver now, but it also gives us quite a bit for the future as well. Okay, just to wrap up so we don't go over here. The other thing is, we've covered natural query. The other thing was the future. I don't know if anyone has seen this, but this is quite scary in terms of the way we could be working. And I really do think in a few years' time, actually. This technology exists now. Any of you come across HoloLens? No? Project from Microsoft. You can buy these HoloLens glasses now for a mere £2,800. And it's about augmented reality. So you think of it from a dashboard point of view. The demo is you can actually see this lady walking through. She's walking in this room as it is this room, but she's got the dashboard there alongside and collaborating with people actually in this space that are in their office in Tokyo. But they're actually looking at that information and are physical avatars within that environment. Now that's kind of scary, but it also opens up a number of possibilities. And when you look as well on the sort of things you can do, I was saying when you start looking at the barcode, you've now got that dashboard on the glasses, and you could walk away. If you thought, well, I need to now go and look at a manual to actually look at some of this stuff, you could have walk away, go and get the manual, you've still got the dashboard here, and you're actually interacting with the actual piece of equipment. So a lot of potential going forward. So the long and the short of it is, with our products, you get MI delivered from your tool of choice, whether that's Excel, whether that's Power BI as an application on your mobile, or whether it's through the web. One of the things that Andy will cover in his thing this afternoon on Power BI is the importance of standards for visualization. One of the downsides of most dashboarding tools is you start with a blank canvas. Now you can imagine if you let more than one person, and even sometimes just one person loose on that, you have dashboards that look and feel totally different. The color schemes are totally different. Green means good in one dashboard, it means a histogram of time in the next dashboard. That will never ever get adoption in your organization. So we're trying to introduce some standards there to make it easy, and we'd obviously love to get your views. I'm sure we haven't got it right from day one either. So the last thing I'll finish with is this whole thing on hosting. I said I'd be honest, we normally love our customers, but there are times we hate our customers. Be honest with you, there are. And that's normally around one thing, and that is getting access to the system. If you ask any of our consultants what's their biggest nightmare, is we can never get on the bloody system. And why is that? It's really simple, because the problem with that is you have mixed people in the cell. You know, I talk to the FD, and the FD says we've got a third-party outsourcing company, and they have our IT. I'll need access to that. Yeah, that's no problem. I'll get that for you. Cool. Third-party outsourcer says no, we have an SLA. You must be joking. I've never heard of this guy. You're never going to have access. And then you have a bit of time that goes around it, and a week later in the project, you've now got it. And that's the problem with cloud. You know, access, 5 years ago, it was all about access from anywhere. Isn't it great? If you're on the cloud, I can access my information from anywhere on the planet. It's fantastic. Azure's the answer. And Azure is an amazing piece of kit, but it's not for everything. How do you control cost as a constant is a financial pressure that most people are under. And now that's flipped. 5 years on, it's now security is everything. We don't want access from anywhere. We want actually bulletproof, secure access. Otherwise, we don't want anyone to access anything. And now with GDPR, we have other issues in terms of what we mask and what we change of data. And we have the Facebook and and. So one of the things that we've been launching is our own analytics platform. And to do that, we've had to change the EiB Analytics software a hell of a lot to work in that environment. But that then does allow you to have a very secure experience. I think it is the world's first hosted environment optimized purely for management information applications, but it does allow you to get access from anywhere at the same time. And certainly if that's something you're interested in, please grab any of the guys. We'd love to talk to you about that, because we see that as a big part of our business to help you deliver secure MI apps going forward. So I mentioned GDPR. We have objects now in the application to encrypt it, and then if you then bring that back in your application, you just get garbage. First line of address there is 1. Yeah, so we can mask data now. So I hope the summary from all that was, I hope that was useful in terms of, I hope it's asked a few questions that you need to think about with your MI applications. We do have a raft of experience at Excel in Business. It's quite frightening when you add the numbers up, but we do have over 120 years between us of MI expertise. And I think, as hopefully the presentation came across, we will challenge you. We don't just accept, oh, okay, we'll just take that data for you. Yeah, but that looks rubbish. Yeah, well, that's what you asked us to do. We don't work in that way. We definitely don't work in that way. And also with the product, hopefully you'll see throughout the course of the day why you should perhaps be giving it a closer look.